We're on.
Yeah, we're on.
We're on.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
So we're sorry that two other guys didn't make it today. So it's just three of us.
Yeah, but the three of us, or the three of us have already spoken, so I'm happy to be here. I'm Henry the Grape. I'm from CyberKongs. I'm the community manager and a member of the Council of Kongs. Just like a quick little intro, CyberKongs was a PFP project that minted in March of 2021. Some of what put us on the map was our community, which has sort of become, I don't want to say a memeable topic at this point in Web3, but it's definitely something that can get a conversation going, which we'll definitely get into today, but super happy to be here.
Great, I'll go next. I'm Fabian. I'm basically a personal investor in the NFT space for the last 2 years. Previously spent the last 2 decades in the wonderful world of Web 1, Web 2 tech, eBay, Depop, Microsoft, Facebook, et cetera, Jumped into this as a side gig, and then basically it grew organically into a German-based podcast, which we're running on a weekly basis, and basically not consulting, but advising a number of projects, brands, and other teams around Web3, NFT, etc. And yeah, looking forward to the discussion as well.
My name is Berenice de Lanne. We've created a utility-based NFT marketplace called O1A, and it's bringing me to communities into the Web3. So it's private member clubs fueled by NFTs. And very excited to hold this discussion with you guys. Like basically picking up from yesterday's, yeah.
I'm feeling weird, like I'm like one seat down. Hang on.
Just come closer, yes.
Okay, less weird. Okay, so let's talk. We don't have a moderator, which is a little bit of a different style of a panel. So this is just gonna sort of be more fireside chat, and maybe if there's questions at the end, we can take some. So actually really happy we got together yesterday because it kind of spawned a lot of conversations about community. And being from CyberKongs, where community is a huge part of who we are, we had an interesting discussion that started off yesterday. Why don't you maybe lead the way with that?
Yeah, I think from my side, I think the first discussion we had yesterday was around community. Do you really need it? And coming from a podcast environment, I'm a like no-nonsense bullshit kind of guy who wants to basically just share the unfiltered truth. I think when I look at community and where the space has evolved the last 2 years, the first question that I always have, do you need to build a community to accomplish kind of your Web3 NFT goals, right? I think a lot of people do it as a tick box exercise right now, and you know, they're grinding to get Twitter and Discord numbers up, do a couple of NFT games in their Discord, and try to build a community like that. And I think so for me, the first thing is, do you really need a community to accomplish your goals? And I think the second point is, obviously in the collectible stream, right, it's important to build a consistent, loyal community, but with changing owners of NFT tokens or so, it's quite challenging. So I think the first, maybe playing devil's advocate here, is ask yourself, do you really need to build a community to go where you need to go?
Yeah, and what you mean is like the intention around building a community. So what we say is like building a community around an interest or a purpose. Like Henry started with CyberKongs, it was the interest for trading different cryptocurrencies, and I think a strong community is always around shared values, interests, and not about the pump and dump of NFTs, what we've seen like in the last month. So that's, I think, really important.
Yeah, you know, with CyberKongs, and of course there's lots of great communities. We're not the only amazing community in Web3, but when we talk about creating and maintaining a community, it's funny, a lot of times at NFT conferences, I'm the community manager, and so there's a lot of community involved in what I do. So I often end up on panels, and then after, you know, as you're around the particular conference, people are asking like, hey, I'd like some, you know, can you give me some tips on a community? We're starting a new community. And I think one thing that I've realized is like there is no perfect roadmap for every project. So creating and maintaining an NFT community is not something that there's just like a syllabus or a manual for, because it really depends what type of community you are creating. CyberKongs in particular is a collectible, revolves around metaverse plays, gaming. We've been fortunate that our community galvanized really early, so we had a lot of OG punks. We had a lot of OGs in the space that sort of served as our foundation, which in itself drew a lot of people into the community. But then we started to gel together by getting together in real life. It's one of these things that I think a lot of us, I say we yearn for. I think there's a reason Web3 communities have sort of become a thing, because I think back in the day, people were joining. In America, we have like the Moose Club, Lions Club. These are old school clubs that really are, I don't want to say they're defunct, but people, my generation isn't joining them, and my kids don't even know that they exist. But my daughters are well aware that the Kongs community, and there's another community that I'm in called the Idiots, are a very close, almost family-like community to me. So I think a reason people like to be involved in communities is because I think humans have this desire to be able to commune with one another. And I think Web3 gave us something to be able to have conversations about, something to be able to center a community around. And on the CyberKong's end, I think being in it for now 19, almost 20 months, we've seen that it's a sustainable movement. It isn't something that is going away. Our numbers have only really increased since we started. So to your point about do you need a community, not everybody needs a community, especially if maybe you're just offering a service. But if you are creating a community that revolves around maybe a collectible, it really needs to start with an organic movement, because I don't think you can just emulate this by just a manual that tells you step A, B, C, and D. It really needs to be a little bit of lightning in a bottle.
And a lot of like brands, they put community building in the communities, setting that to like making money from these communities with the NFT drops. And I think that's what you said or meant. It's like, what I like with CyberKongs is that it started off with the interest and like getting together, not about selling it for like $200,000. So.
Yeah, and I think, again, being very blunt, right, I think a couple of years ago, if you looked at, when I jumped into the first Discords and NFT projects, I think there was a momentum that is drastically different than it is today based upon the sheer number of projects that have sprung up every single day. And I think that the second point is I think what you just mentioned, right, the reason why I was in those communities, and 2 years ago and invested in a few is drastically different on, you can't be in 50 Discords and 50 communities and be an active member as well, right? And I think for me now going forward, where we are today, and I think if you have a new project right now, you really need to carefully evaluate like how you build your community. I think what I've seen for some of the new projects I've been involved in, some of them, start obviously with an invitational. You have to apply to become part of the community, close Discords, or they airdrop you an NFT, and after the first season or the first kind of like experiences that they delivered, you then are asked to pay whatever price you want to pay for that. It's kind of an opposite experience compared to where we were, I think, in early 2021.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it'll be interesting to see in the future how communities start evolving. A lot of people, maybe your community originally formed we were talking about Clubhouse, which I'm not even sure if people are people still
Anyone
using?
still using Clubhouse? Raise your hand. I don't.
Maybe Clubhouse still exists and people are using it, but there were a lot of communities that originated out of Clubhouse. And then there was a major migration to Discord, where a lot of Web3 communities currently live. But I think it'll be interesting to see as metaverses start to come online. And I was in a conversation last night with somebody about metaverses and whether what we have right now are actual metaverses, or is that something we're going to find 5 to 10 years down the road, if ever. But it'll be interesting to see, will communities actually migrate into the metaverse, or are we going to stay in places like Discord, which are difficult for some people to reach?
And then obviously the size of communities. So I think way smaller communities, because I think like with Discord, for example, I can't really follow any of if it's for the DeFi space, but it's a different industry.
And I think one of the key things is, as we now evolve and move forward towards new projects. I remember in 2021, I think people even tattooed their NFT projects on their arms to be getting on an allow list or getting a space for a mint. And I think that was kind of a crazy gold rush area, which I think was not very healthy for the space, because also from a community build perspective, it was all kind of tailored towards the mint And then after the mint, right, there was this kind of bell curve of, and what next? What the fuck are we doing next? And a lot of, projects unfortunately didn't have a lot of things planned because they needed to obviously create royalties and create a kind of seed investments through those mints. But I think what I've seen now, if I think about which Discords I was in at that point and where we are today, you need to have a consistent, sustainable approach with your community.
You need a utility. Or like the interest, otherwise it won't sustain. And this is what we see with cybercongs, is that you have like the cybercongs for sandblocks, so I think, or sandbox, yeah.
Yeah, I think at the risk of offending anybody here, but I think also it's not enough to just run a Rumble Royale Discord competition or play Smashword cards and think that with that you're creating community, right? Because community is if you allow, I think, your community to input feedback, but also I think every single project needs to, I think, have those principles in place, right? Do you, like Moonbirds, try to create those sub-parliaments of, things the community can co-create with you? Other projects are much more, related to, we are telling you what to do and you can vote on certain things in a DAO. I think one of the key examples I had, and without naming any brands right now, a lot of brands have entered that space trying to translate community or acquire new communities, hired some Web3 agencies to do it on their behalf, had moderators that had zero interaction with the project or the brand in itself. And to be honest, I felt like it was brand eroding and community destroying than community building in the beginning. And I think a lot of brands have learned the hard way right now on how to tackle this going forward.
Creating a community is difficult in and of itself, let's say, because there needs to be something that draws people to the community. And exactly to your point, some of the things that were drawing people were things like allow lists, whitelists, whatever you want to call them now. And you would see that where you get a spike of people, then the mint happens, and then all of a sudden there's nobody left. And there's a lot of discords where you can see there's very little chatting going on. I hear from a lot of people in our Discord, any time of day, there is always a consistent chat going on because we've been able to, and this kind of goes to the maintaining of the community side of things. So one of the things that's helped us to maintain our community, if anybody is building a community and looking to try to maintain it, which can be difficult because let's be real, like bear market vibes, you get people that are having certain types of feels out there, right? You got some people that maybe overspent a little bit on some NFTs. Maybe they didn't tell their spouse about it. And some people are just not equipped to be able to grind in Discord for days on end, and they feel like they're just, they're either missing out if they're not in there and they don't want to keep up on it. So you've got to be able to find some ways to be able to keep the community engaged when there isn't a lot going on in the market. A successful project can't just have drop after drop after drop. You have to have other things that are keeping the community involved. So some of the things that, like on the Kong's end, we make sure that every month we're doing a monthly, maybe it sounds corny to people, but a monthly Discord party. It's a get-together of sorts. And we make sure that in that time we're giving away prizes, whether it's an NFT, whether it's some tokens. Last Saturday we had our first metaverse party in the sandbox, and it was something where even though the experience itself was not as fluid as it will hopefully be in the future, it was just something where you get a bunch of 20, 30, 40-year-old people that are still, I'm 40 and I was with my daughter, with my Kong, running around in this pixelized
so cool.
metaverse, but it was fun, it was engaging. A day before, I was in the Crypto Bats, Ozzy Osbourne server, and they were also doing a small party where it was 20 people that were on cyber caves. And when I left the Crypto Bats party, I said, that was really fun. I was surprised. As a 40-year-old, by the way, I wasn't even in the on cyber caves. I was watching somebody stream, and I'm not a huge gamer, so for me to be entertained by just having people that I have some relationships with, streaming in some on cyber caves, looking at artwork, I was that was a fun hour of my day. It was relaxing, my mind was off of work. And so having these get-togethers is a really, I found, effective way of at least keeping the community involved during rough times, let's say. And if at all possible, getting together IRL is it's this intangible effect that's really hard to quantify until you've done it and you've met people. There's something about the relationships that we have all built with each other. Like, there's a reason we're all here, right? We all have this cool thing about Web3 that we like, and when you meet people that you've talked to for years, there's something incredibly special about that. I see people out here that like I've met at different events, and people that I've talked to for years that are like really great friends of mine. So keeping the community engaged during difficult times is, you know, maybe that's standard. Everybody's thinking, well, there's nothing novel about that, of course. But that is a way to keep your maintain your community during bear market vibes.
And I think just building on what you said, right? I think maintaining the community, but also being honest and transparent when there's no major updates. You know, we still want to get involved and get your feedback. Is better than you always, quite honestly, trying to spread rumors that might materialize and you overpromise and underdeliver, right? I think that's a much healthier and sustainable approach, especially if I, again, just look at it from an individual investor perspective. You only have so much cognitive bandwidth, right? You can't go to 50 Discord parties if you invested in 50 NFT projects, and you can't be passionate about 50 projects at the same time, right? And I think it's also fair to say, for some of the projects that you might invest in, you don't want to have the same engagement level, right? I think CyberConks, because I think they were early, right? If they would do the same things that they did probably a year and a half ago, now, they probably wouldn't work to the same extent, right? But you have built that kind of historical engagement, so for you have a different approach of maintaining it as well. Versus other projects, I would say, right, it's also okay if you build other utilities, especially in the B2B space, or about blockchain, right, where you don't have to have a party because there's a different goal that you have for your community, which is much more pragmatic, I would say. So I think that's...
And I think we also need to question the size of communities, because what we see, like Bored Apes, 10,000. I mean, how many names can we remember in real life? I think that's why, like, in the future, will be like meter communities, smaller communities that like form around an interest.
I mean, so I think we could talk about community, you know, for the last kind of 7 minutes, but I'd love to, if anybody has any other questions. I think for me, the key thing is, without you offending anybody again, there's a lot of bullshit community building right now in the space as well. And people might not like it, or people might challenge me on this, but there's a lot of towards minting. Yes, we've got the best community, both on the project side, but also as a personal investor, right? Because people just want to get the check marks or the allow list, check the first hour of a mint, project is dead, community is dead, right? And I think that's super unhealthy, both for quality projects, which there are out there, I think, but also from an investor perspective. So I think the key question that I think we asked ourselves yesterday night is like, how do you find that balance, right? Because without a significant size of community, you will have a hard time having tractions. But maybe it's about, you know, collection size, which are small, and then expanding organically. But then you look at something like art, you know, Globalist, which I think is a very interesting discussion, and maybe we can take that after the panel around like what's the substance behind it and where will this all go and end up with. But I think having every single project I've been involved, I think there's a silent majority of stakeholders, not investors, whatever you call it, but NFT token holders, right? And how do you keep those people stable, interested in your project, is sometimes more challenging than the loud or vocal minority of those people who are in your Discord every single day and want to be super involved. And I think that's one of the key challenges. You might have to have a different approach. I don't know what you think, Henry, on that front.
I mean, we get, it's challenging because you have people that are, I'll just use Kongs as an example, and not to just, you know, I talk about Kongs because it's a big part of my life, but you have some people that entered the ecosystem for 0.01 Ethereum in March of 21. You also have people that entered the ecosystem buying that exact same NFT for 215 Ethereum in September of 2021. Those two people may have completely different views on the value of the community. There was somebody who posted the other day, Kongs are dead. I think they just wrote Kongs is dead. And like my initial reaction was like, honestly, it pissed me off because I'm just like, here's the deal. We did nothing different. Our job as a project is to maintain the project and to keep innovating, but we can't promise value, nonstop value. Nobody can, because that is that lightning in a bottle that you just have to catch at the right time with the right variables. So you have sometimes two different factions. You have people that are at all different entry points, and I think you have to be able to uncouple some of what people have decided is the value of the community. And what I mean by that is the value of the community is not the value of the NFT. They're two different things, but you also have to recognize that there are people that are in the community for nothing more than the value of it monetarily. And so I think it is something that is at times difficult to reconcile because you have those two unique groups. People like me who just love the vibe, and then people who are degen traders that just want to know when price go up.
Yeah.
And so you're always kind of battling those two sides.
And I just try to compare it to my Web 1 and my Web 2 experiences, right? Around how do you scale up something and how do you keep and maintaining value to somebody who comes in like Series A versus Series E, right? As an investor. Of course, NFT tokens are not, you're not an investor per se, but I think the key thing, what I think, Henry has to work through is the same thing that I worked through on like trust and safety side, on the tech side. It's a little bit like running a government, right? You will never be able to please everybody every single time, right? And I think you need to build up a little bit resilience as a project founder and owner as well. And again, coming back to those principles, how do you want to collaborate, engage with your community? If you stick to those, you will have a person who says, you're dead or you suck, whatever, but you need to, as long as you have your principles that you can test in a public environment, I think you're in a good spot to survive and maintain and grow and build out your community.
I want to know, because I know we got a little less than 3 minutes left, what excites you guys about community going forward?
That it's not about a JPEG anymore, about like the moving art. That it's only the utility and like as I said, like the interest around that.
I think for me, the NFT space for me still has a whole lot of growing up to do and maturing. And I think community is a good way to keep everybody honest and can self-regulate as we grow up, and people, there will be some selection process, natural selection process of which communities will survive as well. And also, community is a good way of being honest with yourself, right? But as an investor, I would say, you can't be in 100 projects and be part of communities 100 times. So I think the community itself is a good way of self-regulating what value you have attached to each of those projects. What about you, man?
Yeah, so one of the things that always interested me in Web3, aside from like my own personal relationships with people in it, is so I have 3 daughters, and my oldest is driving, and my youngest is 11. And long story short, they all went through, whether it was like Club Penguin with Disney, Roblox, Minecraft, and I saw how interested they were in those types of things. But granted, we were always very careful about like, hey, who are they talking to, et cetera. I'm really interested to see what that generation does as like my oldest daughter has a VX Kong. She's really interested in Web3. I'm really interested to see how their generation comes into the space and what they start doing community-wise as the space progresses and maybe as the metaverse starts to open.
And it's probably not unrealistic to assume that, I've got 3 daughters as well, that they're going to approach those things vastly different compared to how we approach it, right, as well, in terms of how they apply it and how they engage with the communities that they meet.
And then always thinking about that NFTs are access tokens to a community. It's not like the art like that defines it, it's the access token.
Yeah. Well, I think we can talk about community all day long. If you guys still want to talk about it, we're still going to be here after the session and after the panel, but hopefully, I know we have 30 seconds left. If anybody got any really hard questions to us or regarding Kongs or any other projects that we've been in, please let us know.
Thanks for being great listeners today. Yeah, no, that was good. Hey, sometimes it's not easy unscripted to fill 25 minutes, but I think we did it with 12 seconds to spare. So thank you guys. Always appreciate being able to
Thank you very much.
spread the gospel of Kongs.